Welcome back to the show.
That's a fact.
Time for two more.
You like that?
What in the ham fat is going on with you guys?
Well, I can answer that question. Miss called 9 to noon at FM 100.3 KFAN. We are crossing the pond for profit twice today. And the first foray into old London town is our friend Alec Lewis of The Athletic. Young Alec, middle of the afternoon in London and 9 a.m. for 9 to noon here. How are things over there? Did your dad join you? And good morning.
Cheerio, Paul. Yes, my dad is here, as is my stepmom. We're walking around the old streets of London, and yeah, trying to stay awake because I'm absolutely exhausted, but very excited for the American football. So, thanks for having me.
Alec, how long has it taken you to figure out the phone charger, the thing you plug in that charges your phone and your computer? Have you figured that out yet?
Is that what a charger? That must be that. You know, it's interesting. My dad called me earlier this week, and he goes, "Yeah, we've got the adapter for you in the event that you need it." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I had no idea. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I mean, this is why the parents show up. They keep me in a good spot and keep me prepared. So I figured that out a little bit. I had to do some writing earlier today. Just it never stops. Yeah, you know, the grind is. It's always on.
So this is your first time to London, correct?
First time ever in Europe.
Wow.
So yeah, this is all new. I'm absolutely exhausted, but it's unique.
So when you say you're absolutely exhausted, does that mean there was no sleeping on the flight over there, or maybe the Atlanta layover or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I gave it my best effort, but, you know, you're sitting in a chair upright. It was freezing on the plane. The blanket that they give you is as thick as a piece of loose leaf paper. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it's just not the best sleeping environment. And I'm not an elite sleeping mind anyway. So the idea that it was going to go effectively was just always going to be foolproof. But yeah, there wasn't much Z's going on. Just too excited to watch Aaron Rodgers go up against this team that hasn't lost yet.
Young Alec, if I say you live in wide-eyed fashion, it's a compliment. And now you're in London. You've never been there. We have the London Bridge. We have Big Ben. We have Trafalgar Square. I mean, how wide-eyed are you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm walking around. The taxis look like something that I've never seen before. I mean, it's like, I got to be honest, it's not like the most different thing in the whole world, but I mean, the only reason I decided to call in or to do this is to hear your favorite aspects of London. Like, I want to know when PA goes to London, what spots he has to hit.
There's a clothing store named Charles Tyrwhitt. I think it's Thyritt. I love that.
Okay.
Tell John, he'll know and he'll inform you. I like Charles Tyrwhitt. I like the Indian and Mediterranean food served all throughout London. That's spectacular. And the area around Tottenham Hotspur just has a lot of interesting spots. So if you want to kind of scout out like where you're gonna enter or where the media check-in is and stuff like that, maybe you can get into Tottenham Hotspur. That area is really cool.
No, I appreciate that. That's good. Yeah, I'll let my dad know about the clothing store. Maybe he can, hook me up and I can be dressed as nice as you do to these games at some point. That would be phenomenal. But yeah, no, checking out Tottenham. I'm excited. I was listening to you and KO, Kevin O'Connell, talk on X's and O's about the World War II, I guess, relics where they're practicing. So I'm like trying to envision what this is going to look like tomorrow, and it's going to be, I don't know how I'm gonna handle it, frankly.
Yeah, you'll see it tomorrow, and to get there, are you prepared for the $150 Uber, or are you going to brave the tube?
I think there might be like a media shuttle. I bet Ben Gessling will be in charge of that. He's more on top of things than I would be in that regard, but I believe that is the approach. Now, I will say we took a taxi from the airport this morning, and I mean the traffic to get from the airport to the hotel was a combination of the 405 in Los Angeles, New York City, and it was like a traffic display. It was like the Brian Flores defensive traffic getting from the airport to the hotel. It was unbelievably impressive, and I tip my cap to London for how having 2-lane roads needing 7. Well,
I tip my cap to you, and we tip our cap to you, because you say you're amazingly tired, yet you sound patentedly energetic and incredibly lucid, young Alec.
Yeah. Like, I got to show up. Like, your energy is something that you got to match. So there was zero chance that I was going to be down in the dumps. I was going to be downtrodden. I will say, legitimately, I am very excited for this game this weekend, and it's been such a fun start to the season that I will also say right now, I remember sitting with you the first Friday Football Feast, and you were very optimistic about this group, maybe more optimistic than anybody I talked to, and the reasons for that have obviously shown through. And so I tip my cap to you. There doesn't need to be any hat tipping to me.
Have you had fish and chips yet?
Not yet. No, trying to figure out what we're going to do for dinner. You mentioned Indian and Mediterranean. That was in the crosshairs for sure, without question. Fish and chips might be a weekend type of vibe. I will embarrass myself, but I've never really like had fish and chips. So I kind of thought, I didn't know if it was like actual fish. Nordo's going to laugh so hard. I don't know if it was like actual fish or if it was like chicken fingers, but they just called it fish here. Again, the people listening are probably think I'm the dumbest person in the whole world, but I really didn't know.
Right. So have you, Alec Lewis, The Athletic, theathletic.com. He's covering the Vikings Jets game this weekend, 8:30 a.m. Central for the Boom and 6:30 for Muss and Vikings Football Sunday. Follow Alec's work from London town at Alec _ Lewis, and also via The Athletic and theathletic.com. Have you gone deep diving into the game yet? And if so, who do you think wins and why?
Yeah, I have. I actually, on the plane flight over, I guess part of the reason I didn't sleep was because I watched the offensive and defensive Jets film against Denver, and it was very interesting. I mean, a couple things that stood out to me just in watching that film. One, I could not believe this Braylon Allen running back kid. Obviously, PA, and the people listening know, in fantasy prior to the season, everybody was talking about Breece Hall. And then I turned on the film and I'm like, is Breece Hall number 0? Because this guy looks more electric than the other guy. And so this guy, Braylon Allen, it's going to be interesting. But the Vikings have done a really good job stopping the run. So I don't have a ton of questions in that aspect. And then offensively, I mean, the matchup among Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor against Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, and Michael Carter is probably as good on good as you're. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I think the Vikings are the better team. The only thing that gives me a little concern is just the time change and the flight stuff. And I know Tyler Williams and the Vikings athletic training staff is pretty on top of it. But that randomness of just the sleep and the time and all that stuff to me is the one concern probably as I look at this game for the Vikings, because I do think they're the better team.
You posted your Flores/defense story at 4:45 Central this morning. So how messed up is your body clock right now?
Yeah, I mean, the body clock, I'm not, you know this about me anyway. You and Diana Rossini used to mess with me about the idea that I'm not the biggest morning person. I'm not the biggest early riser. And when I wake up, my friends mess with me because I always say my eyes sing. And I don't know really how to describe it other than that's how it feels often when I wake up. And so to then be woken up across the pond after a 7-hour flight, not knowing if it's 6 hours ahead or behind or where the heck I am or if it's Wednesday or Thursday. The body clock it is messed up. But again, like if I've learned anything by covering this Vikings team and what they've done, it is a fortitude that is required to be your best when it is required, and to push through. And so that's really what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm working on. That's kind of why I probably sound delirious, because I am.
So this Flores defense story, for those who missed it, and you posted at 4:45 this morning Central, what's in that story that you think people will like?
Yeah, there were 4 things, and my editors asked me, they're like, are there 4 things that you're seeing or that you have seen over the past week that you just feel like deserve some conversation that maybe aren't like unto it themselves, like an entire story? And so the 4 things I chose was the Vikings run defense has been, and I give a lot of credit to a lot of different people. I mean, you give credit to Harrison, John, Hillary, Itamani on the defensive line, but I think you also give credit to just the defense and the offense as a whole, having the leads that they do. It helps not having the deception of opposing teams passing and running is not as obvious. And so that was one element of the story. The other was the screen game that they have utilized this year in terms of this offensive staff, Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips, Brian Angelico. What they have done with the screen game has just been, I mean, they have essentially doubled their yards per play when they run a screen this year. And I think you and I and everyone watching can verify that with the eye test. So that stood out. I also, Justin Jefferson, after the game in Green Bay, he said something that really caught my ear at the very end. He's like, I don't think defenses want to see me, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor on the field. And so I mean, to watch Jalen Naylor's ascent throughout the first part of this season without Jordan Addison and for him to look like a legit number 2, I just think nationally and probably around the NFL, maybe this receiver room is a little, I don't want to say it's underrated, because when you have Justin Jefferson, it never is going to be, but to have the depth in this room that they have, it's probably close to as good as it gets. And then the last aspect of that story, I'm trying to remember as I'm running on 1 hour of sleep, and I believe it was about just like the game script and the fact that this Vikings team, you know, there's been skepticism externally. Like I can think of Bill Belichick specifically talking about the fact that they have not played really well, or they haven't had to play really at all from behind. And I'd say part of that, like I can understand that criticism or whatever you call it. It's also, you got to grasp for straws in any aspect in this industry. But I'd also say like the Vikings have been very particular from a stat perspective, knowing that it benefits their team to get ahead early. And so they are constructing their game plans, and they've constructed this roster to ensure that they do that. So it's not just like this random thing that they're like, oh my gosh, they're just getting ahead early every time. Like, well, that's what they want to do because that's how they feel like they can suffocate the opposing team. So those were the 4 things in that story, and I'm rambling, and I hope that made a lot of sense.
Yeah, it did. And in closing, stupid question here. I should know this. The practice tomorrow, it's in shells. That's generally the case on Friday, right?
Yeah, I believe so. You know, I wouldn't say 100% of the time they practice in shells. I think like Kevin O'Connell and they are very attentive to like how the players' bodies are feeling and what is required. And I'm not using a joke with the required. They're like, this athletic training staff and Kevin O'Connell and this coaching staff are really attentive to like whether they need to dial it back or press forward. But I think that's fairly particular, and it's also, I mean, the physicality of this Jets defense. Is when you face Quentin Williams and you face some of these guys that they have, depending on linebacker health and stuff, like physicality is important, just like it was against the Texans and the 49ers. The Vikings have shown that they can be more physical than those types of teams. So if anything, it's probably just like let's make sure we're ready to go Sunday in a capacity that I think we all expect them to be.
Right. And the reason I asked is because you have the travel you mentioned. You have the wonky schedule, even though the training staff and strength and conditioning with their activation programs and everything, they get them up to speed and then they sleep in pods on the flight over there too. So they get better sleep than us in the back and you flying commercial. But I just wonder if into the bye, if Kevin's going to rough them up a little bit tomorrow, not too much, but just a little bit to get them on point for that game Sunday.
It totally makes sense. And I think you're right to mention the bye and knowing that exists on the back end. And so, I mean, again, like if that's the approach they take, knowing the importance of like just putting it is a week by week league, but putting a finishing touch on this first 5 stretch of the season by going out there and dominating the way they have the first 4 weeks would, I think, just be another stamp of approval that nobody really needs, that this team is as formidable as it is. But I'm glad you mentioned the pods. I was going to ask, like, as you mentioned it, I wondered if you got to sleep in a pod or what the activation strategy for you was. I was just curious.
We're the Vikings Radio Network. We're the peas out of the pods. We attempt to sleep upright like you. I got up purposely at 4 this morning, so I can be hopefully super tired on the flight and maybe steal 3, 4, or 5 hours because I've learned this will be my 4th London trip. And I've learned the last thing you want to do is when you get to your room, sleep. At least for me, because then that just like further jacks things up. So I'm going to try to turn it into a full day. And I will see you at practice tomorrow, and maybe we can do something tomorrow night, and I can say hello to your father, John, okay?
That would be phenomenal. And no, to hear that you were thinking ahead like that, when you texted me this morning at 4:30 your time, I was thinking either I woke him up or he is just playing so fast that he is so prepared for this. And really, I expected it to be the latter. And so to hear you confirm that, it really makes me feel good going into this weekend. It's another data point that makes me feel good. So, no, looking forward to seeing you. Wish Nordo was going to be here too. And I hope the people at home enjoy what has been an awesome run to the season to start this thing.
And you've covered it beautifully at The Athletic. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for the time, brother. I appreciate it.
See you, PA.
Alec Lewis from The Athletic, theathletic.com. The effervescent Alec Lewis all wide-eyed over London way for the Vikings and the New York Jets this weekend. Nordo produces 9 to noon, and I'm Paul Allen. Good morning. Thanks to TimberTech and TimberTech.com. The New York Jets perspective provided about 25 minutes from now with a man named Joe Benigno, who used to work for WFAN Radio, and he has a podcast called Oh, the Pain. The New York feel will transpire around 9:40. That'll be followed by Ben Lieber, Nacho Lieber, with his regular Thursday appearance. Our beloved Lindsay Whalen, joins at 11 o'clock, and we go back to London for The Athletic's Peter Carline, a frequent contributor to 9 to noon when we have things that are transpiring across the pond. Good morning. Welcome to 9 to noon. Nordo has the cash thing.
Indeed, the fan and 2 men in a truck want to give you a chance to put $1,000 in your hand with the National Cash Contest. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword bank, and you might bank $1,000 with the keyword bank at KFAN.com.
Fan. Vikes Bites.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. It is time for Vikes Bites, which is brought to you always by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. Elite product from an elite local company, Clearwater, Minnesota raised. They're all over the place now, but you can shop online, thousandhillslifetimegrazed.com, and a box of meat can show up at your doorstep. That's pretty sweet. Otherwise, local Coburn's locations, co-ops as well, and they're proud sponsors of Gophers Athletics. So thank you so much, Thousand Hills. And thank you, Justin Jefferson, for meeting with the media like you do. And here he is talking about the Jets matchup.
Against the Jets in 2022, I mean, I know a lot of teams have good corners, but I mean, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, is that a pretty fun matchup?
Oh, for sure. They're great corners. It doesn't matter, which side you go to. They're great matchups on both ends. So, even the last matchup, it wasn't a big day for me yardage wise. We still got the dub, and I still was able to get in the end zone, but yardage wise, it wasn't that big for me. So, of course, this time around, I want to have a better yardage game. Of course, I want to get in the end zone, but it's definitely going to be tough going against those type of guys. But we live for those matchups. I always love going against those top tier corners. But I'm excited for the matchup for sure.
I must admit, PA, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't remember whether or not Sauce followed JJ around the field in that 2022 matchup. I mean, wonky season. We got Mike White making the game more interesting than it should have been for the Jets. But in the end, as he mentioned, he got the touchdown. But this defense, for things that are struggling right now in Jets land, not necessarily getting enough push up front with that front seven of the Jets. But Sauce is still very good and ruining people's days. DJ Reed, that name's out there as well. This is a very tough test, and getting JJ open and allowing him to find space and make plays, name of the game on Sunday for a team that loves to start fast.
I had forgotten how good DJ Reed was when I think he started with the 49ers, then he went to Seattle. And Kevin O'Connell mentioned him Tuesday during our X's and O's taping during 9 to noon at 11 o'clock. So I did a little deep diving on him. He doesn't have any interceptions this year, but he personifies a sticky man corner. Now with Sauce, I can't recall anybody ever chasing Justin Jefferson in one-on-one coverage.
Neither do I.
Because it's come up a couple of times during the course of the season. Last week with Jair Alexander. So then I just kind of, cursory, just looked at some things and asked a couple of people. And I can't find anybody who remembers like Xavier Rhodes traveling with Odell Beckham Jr. back in 15 or 16, something like that.
Is that a function of the fact that you're seeing so consistent double teams on him that if you're always bracketing him in some way or fashion, you're always bringing a safety over, that the value or the functional nature of getting that 1v1 matchup, you kind of lose that?
Well, what I've noticed of late, specifically in the Packers game with Alexander not playing, and Jair's very good, is the disguise, is they're showing Darnold and subsequently O'Connell and the offensive staff, and I don't know how much, and I may have seen this just a handful of times. They're showing you things that look like it's a cinch double or some type of bracketing with 3 or 4 players around Justin. Then it falls off a little bit. With the addition of Jordan Addison didn't get requisite coverage early in the Packers game, and they paid for it. With the receiving touchdown, certainly, but they got all messed up on that rushing touchdown too, and Justin's blocking on the rushing touchdown was pretty good. Sauce Gardner was the defensive rookie of the year in 2022. Interesting to note with him, he has 0 interceptions in 2 years. Now, that's also a product of teams going to the other side a fair amount. He's very, very good. He's very cocksure, but he's not cocky. And having him travel with Justin, I think, is a long shot. Where they're stuck right now defensively is that they're down C.J. Mosley. And they may try to get him up to this game. He has a toe injury. The Ravens messed around with that toe in 2019, and it cost him the season. Then he signed with the Jets, and it was either COVID related or COVID/toe. He didn't play his first full year with the Jets. C.J. Mosley is one of the better interior defensive players in the NFL. He's very, very good. Quinnen and his brother Quincy Williams, they make up a nice tandem there. Now, Quinnen doesn't have any sacks this year, 6 year from Alabama. No, he has 1. But they're mixing more 4-3 in with the 3-4. So he plays more defensive end than he used to because Javon Kinlaw who had some bust to him with the San Francisco 49ers when he was part of that DeForest Buckner trade. He's off to a fantastic start, and he's playing almost the entire game as a defensive tackle. Now, they got a second-year guy from Iowa State I wasn't real familiar with, and his play time is increasing. Will McDonald. Just remember that name. Will McDonald. He has 5 sacks, and he has 8 sacks while playing just like 16, 17, 18 games. So they keep his reps down. He's super fresh, and he's very hot right now. But where they get a little stuck is when they go nickel, and they either use Chuck Clark, the former Raven, a safety, missed last year with an ACL. A couple of safeties, Tony Adams and Ashton Davis, they play a fair amount. Michael Carter II doesn't have any interceptions in a couple of years, and they're starting to play Isaiah Oliver a little more, 7th year from Colorado. Saleh had him when they were together with the 49ers, but we've seen him before, and he's very beatable. So their defense is good. It's tough. It's very stingy. Very, very physical. They're very physical with that front seven. Very physical with their offensive line.
Here's Brian Flores addressing the media. We were excited and we were in awe yesterday, so we didn't get a chance to catch up with the coordinator's corner as we were howling all the time, waiting for that Wolves deal to be official. Brian Flores talking about Aaron Rodgers.
Brian, you ever see the Rodgers cadence backfire like that on his own team, the way it did on Sunday, and could that help you? Because they might be a little leery to go with it again. Keep going with it.
I think, Aaron Rodgers is obviously a future Hall of Famer. He's been doing this a long time. I'm sure they're going to get that corrected. And he's going to do what he's been doing, his entire career, which is using the cadence, trying to get people to jump, trying to identify what the defense is doing. He's one of the best to ever do it. I'm not really spending too much time thinking about that part of it.
So, and he goes on and continues to really laud. His point was he was kind of simultaneously acknowledging, like, yeah, that didn't look good at MetLife last weekend against the Broncos, but I have nearly 2 decades of tape.
Yeah,
that does look pretty good. What is the thought process around handling Rodgers? He's healthy. You've had good times, bad times with him and the Jets in 2024, but we know that as much as he can look 40, he still has such a special arm, such a special vision and command of the field. Our defense versus Rodgers on Sunday, kind of a marquee matchup.
When I started putting together the game calling depth chart this morning, I can't say outside of a kicker or punter I've ever written down a 20-something. So for him, 20 from Cal. This is Aaron Rodgers' 20th season.
Yeah.
All right. Now, when he didn't play for X amount of years early, but still, he's been in the National Football League 20 years. I mean, he's 40 years old. 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. He really got beat up in that Broncos game, and there was a little bit of a hubbub that kind of popped up a little bit after the Broncos game about his cadence. The ready, where his cadence has been pretty much the same all of his career, and it's high end. But the Jets had 5 false starts, and there might have been somebody off the record who kind of blamed the cadence on it. And then Aaron's like, nah, man, I mean, it's like we had 1 false start the first 3 games and 5 this game, so that ain't a problem. But and Denver's defense also is red hot right now. So they were trying to get a jump on things. Maybe that'll be the case this weekend because Flores' defense also is red hot. But when I watched I'm through the first quarter of the Jets game, and what an awful start. First of all, it was raining. It was raining really hard early in the game. Very first play, Rodgers is crushed. 3 plays later, Garrett Wilson catches a shallow cross 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, is hit and fumbles. Then they get the ball back. down goes Rodgers. Then there's a false start. Then the running back drops it and falls on it. It was just such an inauspicious start for them against the Denver Broncos, and we'll see if it carries over to this weekend, because somebody who knows a lot about the New York Jets is a man named Joe Benigno at Joe Benigno _real via the tweet machine. He has New York Radio Immortality, and now he has a podcast called Oh, the Pain. Let's get the adversarial update from Joe Benigno when 9 to noon continues on your Vikes Bites leader, FM 100.3 KFAN. Let's get the adversarial update from New York Radio Immortality from his days with WFAN. His name is Joe Benigno, and you can learn more about him and follow his podcast at Joe Benigno _real. And he hosts the Oh, the Pain podcast at ohthepain.com. And Joe joins us now. Joe, it's Paul Allen. Good to chat with you.
Paul, I really appreciate being on with you. You do a great job. A long time with the Vikings. Good job by you.
Thank you, buddy. And the Oh, the Pain podcast, I mean, I know it's Jet-centric. However, my sources tell me that you are deeply rooted with passion for the New York Mets. And the old Metropolitans took a bad L last night. When they jumped up 3-1, I thought they were going to win the game, and they just looked like the right side. And then I stopped watching, and your beloved Mets lost. You doing okay?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought I love the manager. I think Carlos Mendoza's done a tremendous job. I just think he made a few mistakes last night. I thought he pulled Sean Manaea too early. Should have had another inning out of him. After Maton gave up that home run and gave up a hit after there were 2 out at 3-3, should have pulled him at that point. I thought there was a couple of mistakes. But you know what, Paul? This has been a tremendous. If you're a Met fan, no matter whatever happens tonight, it has been an unbelievable season. They started out the year 0-5. They were 11 games under 500 at the end of May. They basically had the best record in baseball from that point on. Just a dramatic win in Atlanta on Monday to get into the playoffs. So no matter what happens, this has been a tremendous year if you're a Met fan. I mean, I feel good about tonight. I do. But no matter how it breaks out, this has been a season that's come out of nowhere.
Hey, Joe, are you a Mets fan or a Mets fan and a baseball guy?
I am a Jet, Met, Nick, and Ranger fan.
Yeah.
So all you need to know is I've had a lot of pain. That's why the podcast is Oh, the Pain, because my teams don't win championships.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you're in the Twin Cities market here where, I mean, we haven't had a title since 91 in the Minnesota Twins.
Right, the Twins, Kirby Puckett.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I ask...
and we just got Carl Anthony Town.
Right.
And let me make a statement about that, too, okay? I am not thrilled with this trade. I understand. I don't love trading DiVincenzo. Randall, okay. I don't love trading DiVincenzo. I guess that was that was the deal breaker for Minnesota. I'm just worried about this guy. He's a little soft. He's another one of these 7-footers that likes to chuck up 3-point shots. So we gave up a lot of toughness for a soft player in my mind. But we'll see how it plays out.
So you, Joe, you praised DiVincenzo 3-and-D 22-7 in that series loss against Indiana. Manny G hits a lot of threes. Holy cow! But why didn't you include Julius Randle in that mix?
Well, he was hurt. He didn't play. I mean, that's the one thing. Look, Randle has an element of toughness. Okay. But he's been hurt. He missed basically the second half of the season last year. And I mean, I don't want to knock him for that, but he did. To me, he was a little more expendable. DiVincenzo's part of that Villanova connection. You could just by listening to Jalen Brunson talk, you could see that he wasn't thrilled about losing his guy there. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out with Towns. We'll see.
Those of you here in the cornfields, it's the Oh, the Pain podcast. ohthepain.com with Joe Benigno, who's on 9 to noon right now. I remember when you did middays at WFAN, right?
For a long time with my partner, a former partner, Evan Roberts, who now does the afternoon drive with Tiki Barber on WFAN.
Now, Oh, the Pain. I mean, that Broncos loss for the Jets, that caught you off guard, didn't it?
Well, that was a welcome to the Jets Aaron Rodgers moment. This is the first. I mean, the San Francisco loss was one thing. We kind of expected that. Yeah, this was the kind of game that the Jets typically lose. You know what I mean? They come out flat. You know, the offensive line gets overrun in this game. Rodgers was running for his life. The defense only gave up 10 points, but with the game on the line, Bo Nix, who stinks, made a couple big plays. You know, somebody's got to cover Cortland Sutton in the end zone. They couldn't put the ball in on a 1st and goal from the 1 yard line with 3 shots, and then on 4th down, we had a false start penalty. And even with all that, it still comes down to the field goal kicker, you know, Zerline, with a chance to win it at the end with a 50-yarder, and of course he misses. So it was very typical Jets, and, you know, field goal kickers are like relief pitchers. You know, 1 year to Mariano Rivera, and the next year to Adam Ottavino. So, you know, right now I'm a little concerned about Zerline. But typical Jet loss. Welcome to the Jets, Aaron Rodgers. And we'll see. I mean, I'm concerned. They got a very tough 3-game stretch. They got your team coming up. Then they got to go to Buffalo. Not go to Buffalo. The game's in Jersey at MetLife. On a Monday night against the Bills. Then they go to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers on a Sunday night. So you could be looking at 2-5 here. And I think if that happens, I think the coach is gone. I really do.
Hey, Joe, the 5 false start penalties in the Broncos game, and I know it was wet. I know it was raining.
Yep, I was out there. I'm still waterlogged.
Right, but it wasn't like a deluge for the entire game.
Right. Right.
So, like those false start penalties and Rodgers' cadence, did that factor into it? How's everybody handling that?
Well, I mean, to me, I think Rodgers hit it on the head. He said, how about having some accountability, right? They had 13 penalties in this game. 5 false starts, but 13 overall. Actually, 13 that were accepted. I mean, to me, that comes down to the coaching. You know, let's not be getting on Rodgers' cadence. He's a Hall of Fame. He's been doing this for a million years. How many times we even saw it week 1 against San Francisco? We got a long touchdown pass to Alan Lazard on a free play when he got the Niners to jump offside. So, you know, I don't think Rodgers is too thrilled with the head coach right now. I'm starting to see that. I'm getting that impression, but you know, we'll see what happens. I'm curious to see how they come out and play on Sunday in London, that's a joke too. But nevertheless, when are you going to London, Paul?
We leave later today, like 6:30, something like that. So we got practice tomorrow. Then we got the JETS.
You like this London nonsense? Do you like this stuff?
Well, it's this will be my 4th trip, Joey B. And once you get past the rigmarole of sitting in the back of the plane, attempting to sleep upright over the long plane, getting your body clock right.
Right.
Then you settle in. But I mean, it's like, other than that, Miss Lincoln, how was the play? I mean, it's not the worst lot in life, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. The good news for me and for us here is that the game starts at 9:30 in the morning, which I love. And, you know, by the afternoon I could be playing golf, you know, so I'm very happy about that. That's the one good aspect of it. 9:30 in the morning kickoff.
So Lazard has 3 touchdowns, and you know, so I'm watching back the first quarter of the Broncos game, and what an inauspicious start. Very first play, Rodgers tries to sell something right, swings back left, and he gets crushed. Then the 4th play, shallow cross to Garrett Wilson, gets popped and he fumbles. I mean, it was just an awful start. But I'm just deep diving this thing a little bit now. Do they throw the ball enough to Garrett Wilson?
Well, I think to me, I think it's on Garrett Wilson. I don't think he gets open enough. You know, he had Patrick Surtain on him the whole game. You know, I think that the 2 young superstars, Breece Hall, who had a miserable game against the Broncos, he rushed for 4 yards, two shots at the goal line, he couldn't put it in. You know, when my team needs a yard, I want to give it to this kid Braylon Allen, the rookie out of Wisconsin. You know, number 0. I mean, he's a much better short yardage back than Hall is. But these guys, I think they're reading their press clippings too much, Paul. To be very honest with you, I mean, these guys are only in their 3rd year. Everybody's anointing them as being these great players. Well, we haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet this year. I think these guys are getting maybe a little too full of himself, to be very honest. You know, Lazard's been much, but Mike Williams has done more so far this year than Garrett Wilson. Certainly Lazard has. So I'm a little concerned about that. I will tell you that.
Joe Benigno with the Oh the Pain podcast, ohthepain.com for the adversarial update on the New York Jets. ohthepain.com to learn more. Listen to those good podcasts. You referenced something about the coach Robert Saleh earlier, and you know, potential friction with Aaron Rodgers. Wouldn't be the first time that's happened with Aaron. But just overall, like over the totality of Saleh's run, what are you not liking?
Well, here's the bottom line, Paul. He's 20-35 as head coach of his team. And the only reason that he's still the coach of the team is because Rodgers got hurt last year, and that kind of gave him a free pass for last year. There's no excuses anymore. He's got his quarterback. We got a team that's a ready-made team to win now. Who knows? Maybe they're going to wind up with Devontae Adams as well. I'm all for that if it happens. I don't know. We'll see. They made a big mistake with this Hassan Reddick thing. How about that? Joe Douglas really dropped the ball here. How do you make a trade for this guy without having his name on a new contract or whatever? So that's really turned into a disaster. There's no doubt about it. We'll see. But like Bill Parcells would always say, you are what your record says you are, and your record says you're 20-35, and that's not very good.
What do you think of the 2024 version of Sam Darnold, Joe? Compared to the quarterback you witnessed around 2018, he's gotten pretty good out here.
Well, here's the thing with Darnold. I think number one, the coaching was never good with him. He had a major setback when he got that mono. That set him back. There's no question about it. I always felt he had potential. You know what? I got to tell you, Paul, I'm happy for him. He's got a big-time coaching staff there now. He's got a very good football team. You got maybe the best receiver in football in Jefferson. You're running the ball well with Aaron Jones. Good for Sam Darnold. I got no problem with that. I got no issue with him. I got no issue with what Geno Smith's doing now in Seattle. We've seen it many times. You've been around football forever. We've seen quarterbacks develop late in their careers. That happens all the time. Vinny Testaverde, Jim Plunkett, going all the way back to him, Rich Gannon. You've seen a lot of guys that really didn't develop until really they got into their 30s as really good quarterbacks. It's a little younger here for Darnold, but I just think he's in the right situation with the right coaching, and the maturity level now has caught up to the talent. And you're seeing the results now.
All right, last one, my brother. Do you think old Sauce Gardner will track and run around with Justin Jefferson? Do they do that with Sauce?
They don't. They don't enough. He should have been on Cortland Sutton the entire game last week, and he wasn't. They had DJ Reed on him. I want to see Sauce Gardner on the best receiver. And there's no reason, if we're going to win this game, I want to see Sauce on Justin Jefferson. I watch these games, and they don't even throw at him, They don't even. Look. Let me say this: Sauce is not Darrelle Revis yet. Darrelle Revis was one of the all-time great corners. He's not in that class yet. Okay, but I got to. We'll see. He should be. The bottom line on Gardner is he should be shadowing Justin Jefferson the entire game. There's no question about it.
Lastly, part two. Who in the heck is this Will McDonald with 5 sacks?
He was their number 1 pick last year out of Iowa State. He's okay. He didn't have a great game. He had a couple offsides that he lined up in a neutral zone last week. That doesn't help. I know he's had 5.5 sacks. I'm still not completely sold on how good a pass rusher he is. So, to me, the jury's still out on him, Paul.
So you and Robbie Rosenhaus sweat those Mets tonight, and we thank Robbie for helping us. I know you guys are friends, and I appreciate you joining us, Joe.
Paul, I appreciate it. It's an honor talking to you. It really is. Good luck. Have a safe trip to London, and hopefully my team can give your team your first loss of the year. We'll see.
And go Mets tonight. See you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Take care.
That's Joe Benigno, formerly of WFAN Radio, and you can learn more about him and his podcast at Joe Benigno _real via Twitter, and he hosts the Oh the Pain podcast. That's at ohthepain.com. Now, that when you chat with somebody like that about their team, and when I say somebody like that, he's deep diving. He's watching the games. He knows what he's talking about. He's not just flippant rube jumping on social media and either jumping off a bandwagon or trying to catch one going 100 miles per hour. But when you hear something that sharp and that pointed and that poignant in the analysis, it, at least for me, it requires a deep breath and just like rethinking some things that he said. In other words, they got this second-year guy from Iowa State. I think he was 13th or 15th overall in the 2023 draft, Will McDonald. We talked about him in the previous segment during Vikes Bites. And he leads the team in sacks, and it's Joey B. Is just telling it like it is, where he's like, he's all right. You know, he ain't that great. Sauce Gardner, he dressed up, not in Darrelle Revis fashion, but dressed him up nicely. But, you know, it's New York and New York radio, Philadelphia radio, a lot of radio around the country, but specifically in markets like that. I've just learned over the years, it is absolutely second-guessing central, no matter how good or how bad a team is. So it's like, all right, what happened to the Mets last night? Took Manaea out too early, left a reliever in too long, should have done this, didn't do that, should have. And that's what fuels fan inclusion and fan enjoyment, specifically from an interaction standpoint, when following their favorite teams. But you also can get a tone of, specifically on the negative side, you can get an undertone that will overlap the conversation in overarching fashion when it's negative. Like, I mean, the false starts, he made the false start sound like this is the most oft penalized team and the falsy of all the false start teams in the history of the NFL. They had 5 in one game, but 1 in 3 previous. So there's the context with that. And, you know, the way he laid out the first 7 games for the Jets, and this is, you know, Robert Saleh has a bad record as head coach of the New York Jets. And, you know, he and Aaron Rodgers have had some awkward moments on the sidelines at times. Saleh is a defensive guy by trade from the San Francisco 49ers. O'Connell is very familiar with him from the days that they've gone against each other. Yet, you know, he lays it out. I mean, in-season coach firings are rare. Yet New York radio, the Pain podcast guy immediately will go to, if they lose this one and if they lose the next one, and then, you know, maybe it starts to get a little dicey, I think the coach will be fired during the season. So that is the adversarial update with a side dish of New York radio via the The Pain podcast at ohthepain.com. And we thank our friend Robbie Rosenhaus from Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130, a friend of Joe's, for facilitating Joe Benigno for the 9 to noon production. Nacho Libre is next.